And we are live here in the Storycraft Cafe. I am super excited to welcome Kit Frick to the show today. Kit has a brand new book, as you can see on the screen, that I've just popped up here, Friends and Liars. I have had the privilege of getting into several of Kit's books, and we were just chatting right before we went live. Kit and I talked about 5 years ago, just as the Black Plague that shall not be spoken of was rolling into full effect, and Kit launched a book during that time, and an amazing book, as they all have been. Kit, I absolutely love thrillers, suspense, stories of people behaving at their best and behaving badly, kind of all rolled into one. And Friends and Liars did not disappoint. I'm so excited to have you back today and to talk about it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back, Hank, and happy that we are not currently in the middle of the COVID crisis. That this is
Right.
this is great.
If I remember right, it was like summer when
Sure
Zoe
was.
Spano's came out. Yeah. And
Mhm.
man, trying to launch a book during all of that. Uh, has this book launch been more back to normal than it was there? Like, what kind of challenges did you have to deal with trying to launch a book, and there's no in-person events, no, people can't go to the bookstores and pick up stuff. I would
It
think that
was
this
a
book launch has
weird
been much better.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a strange time. I remember I actually did have an in-person launch for I Killed Zoe Spanos, but it was restricted to, I think, 10 people in the store. It was
Oh,
distanced,
bizarre.
masked, and we were mostly on a live stream. So
Yeah.
it was like my husband, my mom, and like a handful of friends. But it was so nice to have actual people in the store. I remember
Right.
feeling very lucky that we were able to do that. Yeah, it's been so nice for this book launch not having just many things canceled. That's the
Yeah.
main thing that I remember about
Right.
that time was lining up events and then just watching them drop away one by
Right.
one. But yeah, so it was great. I had a launch party the other night,
So
and
amazing.
multiple people were in the store, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Of course, now it's December, so it is I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is 18 degrees today.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
it's not the time of year that you want to be running around doing a lot of book promotion, but I love recording a podcast
Oh,
because
yeah. Yeah.
here I am in the warmth of my own office,
Yeah,
talking to you.
because it's like 68 in my office, and, just kinda, you
Practically
know
balmy.
yeah, it's light enough that I can slip on a light jacket, or something, but there's no snow outside or outside my office door. So I don't wanna talk about COVID today, but I just when
Yes,
I was
moving
looking at
along.
the last time we talked, it just all these memories started flooding in, of the things that we've, tried to forget, and, uh, but Friends and Liars, came out last week, a week ago today, is that right?
It did, yes, 1 week ago today.
One thing that I absolutely love about thriller and suspense writers, and especially like psychological suspense, is the people that write these kinds of books that I love so dearly, um, are some of the kindest, most generous, funny people that I've ever met. And some of the stories are, you think, wow, how does someone write characters like this? And then you meet them, and they're just like, the most lovely people ever. Do you What is it that makes us love stories of people behaving badly, of people kind of leaning into the um not the better angels of our nature, the whatever the opposite of that is.
Yeah, the
Uh,
devil on our
ye
shoulder.
exactly, exactly. Like, what is it that makes us love these kinds of stories?
Well, I think that they are escapist in the same way that romantic comedies are.
Sure.
They're on the other end of the spectrum, but that's another genre that I love to read.
Yeah,
And I think they both genres, both thriller and rom coms, allow us to indulge in scenarios and characters that maybe are far distant from those in our lived experience,
right,
but they're just incredibly fun to you know dive into for the space of time that it takes us to read a book. And I think with thrillers specifically, um we probably would not want to befriend any of the friends in Friends and Liars in real life.
yeah,
But it is it allows us to go to these places that we don't want to experience
yeah,
in real life. And it's Friends and Liars is a destination thriller. It takes place at this fabulous lakeside palazzo right off of Lake Como in Italy. Um, we follow the Monroe family, who are fabulously wealthy. Samuel Monroe is a Hollywood venture capitalist. His wife, Helena, comes from old money New England stock. And stepping into their life is something that in theory we might love to do until we
right,
realize everything that comes along with it. But from the safety of our beds and couches, or kitchen cooking or car driving, if you'd like to listen on audio,
right.
like, we get all the good stuff without any of the without having to experience any of the dark and murdery stuff in real life.
Right, right. I've said about horror before that it's like the only time in life where you can wrestle with actual demons from the comfort of your reading chair, you know?
Yes.
It's like, okay, maybe there's something about us getting to face down the scary things while also being, comfortable and, you know, kind of deal with it all from the comfort of home. Um,
Right. I don't want to take part in a revenge plot, but
exactly,
I definitely
exactly.
want to like have the immersive experience of reading about it.
Right, right, for sure, for sure. Um, Kit, I am fascinated with the moment of creation. Like at one point in time, Friends and Liars doesn't exist in any form or fashion. Just doesn't exist. And then either a character walks onto the stage of your mind, and you're like, well, who are you and what are you up to? Or maybe you have read a news article or something, and then your mind starts playing the what if game.
Mhm.
I think Stephen King talks a little bit about that in On Writing, kind of you notice something and you start playing the what if game, and playing out these scenarios and whatever the moment of creation is, and then all of a sudden, Friends and Liars does exist, and it's your job as the writer to dig that story out and excavate it and clean it off and dust it up, and do all the things that writers do to bring a story to life. And then, we have a bound, paperback that we're, talking about today. What is that initial moment of creation usually like for you? And is it similar each time, or is it a completely new experience with every book that you've written?
It's new every time, because and this is one of the most this is one of the questions that I get from my family, especially all the time. My mom and my aunt are always asking me, "How do you come up with these ideas?" Um, and the answer is, like, they usually come to me, and then I have to do the work of figuring out how it's going to be a book. But
Yeah.
those initial little sparks that
Mhm.
become the things that an author combines to create the entire world of the story, they're usually very happenstance and not something that I can force into being, which I have tried when, it's time to, okay, we have to pitch the next book idea, and I'll sit down with an open document on my computer and then just nothing comes. So the book idea for Friends and Liars came sort of two different things happened in close proximity. I went to a college reunion, and this book is about a group of college friends who have become
Yeah.
estranged and have reunited for the memorial service for their friend Claire, who died 5 years prior. So with that context in mind, I had visited my college reunion, run into, in addition to the friends that are still near and dear to me from college, I also ran into a whole bunch of people that I hadn't seen since graduation, and just thinking about how you can be super close to someone
Mhm.
for a short period of time, especially in college.
Right.
Um, but perhaps at a job or other places in life, and then you fall out of touch. Maybe nothing terrible happened, but
Yeah.
your lives just go in different directions. But then coming back together at the reunion, I had some really amazing conversations with people that I hadn't spoken to or really much thought about in years. And it just brought back all of these memories. And I kept thinking about that closeness and how that goes away and how it can come back. So that was one thing. And then I went on a weekend trip with my husband to New Paltz, New York, which is one of
Mhm.
our favorite fall getaway spots. And we took this hike up to the Montauk Mountain House.
Yeah.
And oh no, I'm sorry, I'm saying it's not. I'm conflating two things. It's the Mohonk Mountain House. Um, I'm also thinking about Montauk, which is a different thing going on in my brain. In any case,
Understood.
we were walking. It's this fabulous house on a lake, and it is it's this like luxury hotel.
Yeah.
And as I was hiking up there, I was thinking what an amazing setting this would be for a story, and I didn't have anything connected to it. I was just thinking
Mhm.
about it as a setting. And of course, Friends and Liars winds up taking place in Italy. It's a completely different lake with a completely different fabulous house, but somehow that college reunion and that trip were the two things that got me thinking about this book idea. And then I had an idea that a classmate would have died and these other classmates would have become estranged in the aftermath and would maybe come back together. And so from there, the actual idea for the story began to form. But it is often experiences where I'm not thinking about writing at all.
Yeah.
In fact, being away from home helps, on at this reunion, at this trip, really taking a step away from my computer is often when those initial sparks happen because I'm living my life, and living your life is where story ideas come from, at least for me.
Yeah. It's so funny because I wrote a book last year, and I was having a conversation with someone about it, and they were like, "Well, what was your first idea or whatever?" And I started telling kind of where the idea came from, and they looked at me and they're like, "That's not what this book is about at all." I was like, "Well, kinda, because this idea led to this idea, which led to this idea, and then you wind up over here." But when you're writing it, you don't realize how far from the initial idea. It's just one thing leads to another, and kind of like your experience in New Paltz led to Italy. Duh, like of course it
Right.
did.
Of
Like
course.
of course it did. You know, and but on the surface, you're like, Italy, New Paltz, what? And you're like, well, Yeah, I mean, it just
Yeah, like,
it
I swear I got this idea for my Italy set thriller on hike in the
yeah,
fall in New
in
Paltz.
upstate
Yeah,
New York, of course.
exactly.
Why duh, like, everybody can see that. It's the writer's brain is, it's a magical thing, and, we don't, we don't get to take full credit, I think, for how things work, but, we're just happy to be in the passenger seat sometimes. How many books is this for you now?
Friends and Liars is my 7th published novel. I also
Amazing.
have
Oh,
a collection of poetry.
I was gonna say 6, but 7 is amazing. You have written, YA as well as adult thriller suspense, right?
Mhm, that's right.
When you begin, do you know that a story is going to be for a YA audience as opposed to an adult audience? And what are some of the differences in the way that you approach a novel that's going to be geared for one audience over another? Or is that something you think about at all? Or is it just you just write the book and then afterwards you sort of realize it's kind of like themes. Some people have a theme in mind when they write. Some
Mhm.
people, when you finish the book, read back over it and say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was
That's what this
wrestling
book
with
is
this
about.
idea. There's theme all over it." I didn't say it, but what's your experience with writing for a different audience or a
I
perceived different audience? Because I know
Right.
lots of adults that read YA.
Yeah, that's true, and I think a
Yeah,
lot of teens read
of
up, and if
course.
you like mysteries, often I
Yeah.
mean, I was certainly reading John Grisham when I was, I
Oh,
don't know, 10,
a
so
1,000,000%. Yes.
yeah. But yes, I definitely have the audience in mind in terms of
Okay.
age category when I'm writing. Partly it's for very boring reasons having to do with how book publishing works.
Yeah.
If you want to have your book published by a traditional publisher, it's generally the case that the imprints are organized by age category.
Yeah.
So, with my very first young adult novel, See All the Stars, I could have written, for any audience. I wasn't under a contract. I wasn't
Mhm.
agented. The world was my oyster. But I knew specifically that I wanted to write that story for a teen audience. It was,
Mhm.
it was about a teen character. I had done a lot of reading in young adult leading up to the drafting of the novel. So I had been immersing myself in writing for the young adult age category, particularly contemporary and suspense. Um, so I knew that because I was planning to query agents with that novel and I would need to craft a query letter, I would have to appeal to agents that represented what I wanted to write, that I had to think about things like the genre and the
Mhm.
age category. So I had all of that in mind as I was writing the story. And I do think that that helped me successfully pitch myself and pitch my novel to agents when I was querying. And that, again, in turn helped my agent to craft a submission letter and submission list when going out to the various publishing houses that we submitted to. With my YA books, I have 5 of them, and they are all published by Mackleberry, which is one of Simon and Schuster's children's and teen imprints. And so for the subsequent books, I was pitching ideas to my editor there. And,
Mhm.
again, they don't publish books for adults at Mackleberry. So,
Right.
because of the mechanics of publishing, that was all very much front of mind from the very first seed of the book. Um, I had it in mind that I was going to write a novel for adults. I wanted to publish in both age categories from really early on, from the time that
Mhm.
I found my agent. In fact, I when I was researching agents, I specifically looked for agents that represented both YA and adult because I knew that I had career goals of publishing in both age
Hmm.
categories. But then it just took a while to get. I wrote a couple of adult novels that one we put out on submission and it didn't sell. Another one we never even got to the point of putting out on submission due to various timing things. Um, but I when I was writing The Split, which is my first novel for adults that came out
Hmm.
last year, and then Friends and Liars, I very much knew that publishing for adults was the goal with these stories. So, yeah, I mean, I found that really from the beginning, if
Yeah,
your goal is to put out your books through a traditional publishing path, at some point in the process, you have to have these things in mind. It maybe doesn't have to be from the beginning. I imagine there are many writers that will write a story and then after it's done, sit down and think about the audience and the age category and how they are going to position this book. I'm a very type A person. I work in book publishing. I worked at Simon and Schuster as an editorial assistant, early career. I've worked at an independent publisher for many years, and so it's part of my nature to have these logistical things in mind in
sure.
addition to the creative.
When you're writing for a YA audience, do you find yourself because you've had both feet firmly planted in each arm of publishing, the YA and adult. How do you approach? I guess what I'm asking is what's the difference in the
Mhm.
why? Because I've read plenty of YA, especially mystery thrillers, that except for the age of the protagonist and kind of the friend group that you experience is typically a younger age. Content wise, there's not a lot of difference in well, especially mainstream mystery thrillers.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of uh, shall we say adult content that couldn't be read by a mature teenager. So what are some of the guidelines that you give yourself when you're writing a YA novel? Are you self editing? Are you consciously avoiding certain subjects or talking around them? Kind of how do you approach writing for that younger audience or perceived younger audience?
Yeah, no, I think your characterization is very astute in that, the stories can really there are, let's say, there are many stories that are told in the mystery thriller suspense
Hmm.
genre that can be told um, with teen characters and can
Hmm.
be told with adult characters, and they would be completely different books, but
Yeah.
in terms of, like, the core mystery and the subject matter, um, there often isn't a huge divide, and I think that that is why there is so much overlap in audience,
Yeah.
why there are so many adults that are reading YA in the mystery thriller suspense genre and vice versa. I have never felt very restricted when
Yeah.
writing YA. I think that this is not to say there are no differences.
Hmm.
It does have to do with, as you say, it is about the experience of that protagonist and the other core characters. They have different life
Yeah.
experiences when you're writing a 16, 17-year-old versus writing a protagonist in their 20s, 30s on up. And so they're going to bring those different life experiences to the story. But for me, the main difference is tapping into where this character is at the point in time that the story is being told and telling it honestly and truthfully from that point of view. And that is what the big difference is because, with a 16-year-old character, it's very different from a mystery, say, where you have a 30-year-old character that might have, um which is not even an older adult, certainly. A
Right.
30-year-old is still young,
Yeah, I
but, like,
remember
the
30.
right, right. But the difference in life experience is vast
Yeah.
between a character that's in high school, potentially living at home with family, versus someone who is, you know, on their own, might be married, might be a parent, it might be neither of those things, but, it it is really about telling the story through the lens of that character. That is the big difference in writing for a teen audience versus writing for an adult audience. And then I think it's fun as an adult to read teen characters. I love reading YA. And I think a lot of adults do for the same reason. And as a teen, I always loved reading up.
Right.
But I don't think it has been the case that there are strict rules or guidelines about what you
Mhm.
can or cannot include in YA. It's just about the way you present it on the page. Like, for instance, if you're writing a sexual encounter for a teen, you're not going to write it in a way that is meant to be titillating and you know there's a newness to the experience that
Mhm.
is being explored. There's um for an adult character, you can write that scene entirely differently, but that's not to say like you cannot have that content in YA. Now there might
Yeah.
be certain publishers that, like there can be there's more nuance to it than that.
Yeah.
But I have not felt restricted in that way. It's just about the lens through which you write it, and you have to stay true to the characters and the age of your characters.
Would a simple way of saying it be that it has more to do with voice than it does, content? Or is that
Yes, I think that is a
oversimplified?
very succinct way of
Okay.
saying what I just said in 1,000 words. Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. Um, we in the writer community, we love to put people into one of two buckets, and the conversation that's been going on forever,
I
and we
think I
love
know
to
where this is going.
yeah,
Please
we love to
continue.
say that people are either pantsers or they're plotters.
Mhm.
My experience is they're and I can't say this for definite because there's always outliers, but I think most people exist on a spectrum somewhere between pantser and plotter. And we have one camp that we feel more comfortable, but the other creeps in, and there are benefits to both, obviously. um Writing mystery suspense, do you find yourself more on the plotter side, or how do you feel about that discussion at all?
Yeah, I do. And that has been the case from the beginning for me, although my relationship to plotting has definitely evolved, the more manuscripts that I have written. Um, in general, I say I like to plot. I don't like to be too terribly detailed because I don't want
Mhm.
to zap the joy of the discovery process. And I
Right.
often find that my drafting brain is way more fun and creative than my planning brain, which should come as no surprise. That makes
Yeah.
complete sense. But if I try to, plan the nuance of every single scene, it's not going to be as good and it's not going to be fun to write. So I need to know the gist of what is happening before I dive in, but I don't want to over plot it out. um, I have gotten better at striking that balance as I've gone. When I wrote my first book, it has 2 timelines that are
Mhm.
woven together, and I couldn't really fathom writing the timeline that takes place in the present day before writing the entirety of the timeline that takes
Mm.
place in the past.
Yeah.
Because I knew there would be so many. I mean, I had a very bare bones outline, but I knew that there would be so much detail that would
Right.
unfold that it seemed impossible to write scenes in the future when I hadn't written the past yet, and it made it
Yeah.
a terrible revision challenge to actually get the book to read cohesively,
Yeah.
and so, I really learned to be a better outliner after that first experience, and, I've adapted my process, but I have always been on the plotting side
I'm
for
I'm
sure.
so glad that you brought up the dual timelines because in this book, we've got a bit of looking into the past and the present
Mhm.
as well. Did you find out that you didn't have to answer all the questions? Like, from that experience where you said the first
Yeah.
time, like, you felt like you needed the past to be solid so that you could then riff off of it in the present. Did
Mhm.
what did you discover that allows you to be better at it by your own description now? How do you go about building past events without having to go back and just fully create a history?
Yeah, I found that knowing the sort of key facts about the past,
Yeah.
is critical to writing the present, although sometimes even those change, and then that's something that you have to, adjust for in revision, but, um it's a revision it's gonna be a revision challenge either way, right?
Yeah.
Because, one way or another, you are going to have, work that you're doing first and
Mhm.
work that you're doing later, and then in revision, you're going to have to go back to that work you're doing first because things will have evolved during the course of
Right.
the writing process, but I have found that it is much easier to adjust for the details that come out
Mhm.
in the past when you write it and, reflect those in the present than it is to try to sort of retrofit chapters together when they were not written in the order in
Right.
which they are meant to be read.
Yeah.
That was a much bigger revision challenge than it is to simply adjust for evolving and more richly nuanced details and characters and backstory as you go.
Yeah. It's nothing like trying to braid together timelines that have been written independently
Yeah,
and
never again.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the book now, Friends and Liars, is available everywhere. You can go to your favorite local bookstore, and I think all bookstores you can just walk in now, unlike 5 years ago.
You
And
can,
you
indeed.
you can and just go grab a copy right off the shelf. If you don't have a great local bookstore, we're gonna put links to it in the show notes, where you can grab it from Amazon. Um, Kit, I have not yet had the chance to listen to the audiobook, but it's in my queue. Um, have you listened to it or have you gotten any samples of it?
I have not yet actually, that reminds me, I need to follow up with my publisher for my author copy of my audiobook. I have
Right.
not listened to the complete thing yet, but I did get to help cast the audiobook, which
Ooh.
was very fun. It is a full cast recording, so there are,
Ooh, so
different
fun.
narrators cast for each of the 5, main
Yeah.
characters that are narrating the story, and, I'm incredibly excited to hear the final product.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'll email you and tell you what I think about it.
Oh,
But
great, please do.
I've already read the book. This will be a new experience for when my wife and I are going on Christmas vacation in a couple weeks. We're going
Oh,
to listen to it.
fun.
So, love it. I absolutely love this book, Kit. We're going to send everyone to pick up a copy of it. If people are just discovering you and want to dig into all the great stuff you're up to, where's the best place online for them to find you and to get into all things Kit Frick?
Yeah, I am occasionally on Instagram. I do try to keep my website up to date. That's
Yeah.
kitfrick.com. Instagram handle is at kitfrick. And I run a quarterly newsletter called These Little Secrets. And it's just Substack slash kitfrick. I think you just search my name on Substack, you will find it. So those are the best places.
Excellent. I'll link up all those in the show notes as well. Kit, this has been so much fun catching up. Thank you for joining me again.
And thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us, y'all. Bye bye.